Gentlemen, welcome back to the yard. Last year I built a garden, but I didn't cover it hardly at all. This year is going to be a little bit different as I plan to put out a few videos over the course of the summer on the topic. Anyways, the start of this series is going to be, of course, the most important part, and that's getting a plot to garden on in the first place. So today I'm going to show you how I turned what was once completely dead infertile grass into rich fertile soil, which will hopefully support a bountiful harvest over the course of this summer. Let's get started. All right, so the first part of this job is going to be removing this existing border because of course I'm expanding this existing plot this way. Wood's expensive, so I'm going to reuse this piece on this edge here. So it's just secured in with some nails. I'm going to have to kind of get some purchase under there. Alrighty, so this right here is my angle grinder with a sanding disc. Definitely the most important but also most dangerous tool in the shop. I suppose if you didn't have one of these, you could use a Dremel or belt sander or something else like that, but this is probably the fastest way to do it. And let's just sharpen this here. So still not the nicest edge, but definitely a lot better. Anyways. I think you guys get the picture. This just takes a little while. This is the hard part. It is worth noting that the stuff in the corners goes a lot easier than the stuff out here. Again, the stuff there is totally dead, so there's basically no roots holding it together, versus this, which is a lot tougher. Anyways, I'm just going to set this in place. So we've installed the border here. I've packed the dirt underneath, so it's sitting on nice flat ground now. And it's nailed down, so it's nice and sturdy. Now we have to move on to the most difficult part of this job, and that's dealing with the existing organic matter. Now generally there are 3 methods of doing this, and I'll list them off from easiest to most difficult. So firstly, the easiest method would be to simply place a tarp or other opaque plastic barrier over this. And just simply wait and let the grass decay and compost by itself. The problem with doing this is, of course, it takes weeks to months. The growing season here is only 5 to 6 months, and I need this land immediately, so I can't afford to wait. The second method would be to rip up this material like so, and then fold it over on itself in rows. Now the advantage of doing this is it's less labor intensive and you get some existing organic matter to add into your garden. The reason why I'm not going to do this method is because I want the ground here to be flat, and if I end up with a bunch of rows, that's not going to qualify. And secondly, this over, you know, fine, most of it will decompose, but there will still be some grass clippings, some weeds growing in this material. And generally I prefer to not have to come back and pick things out every now and then. I'm going to be doing option 3. What this option is removing this material entirely. Now, as for what you can do with the material, you can either put it into a pile in the corner and let it decompose sort of in a compost pile. But since I don't want that, and I don't want that sitting around, what I'm actually going to be doing, putting these into yard waste collection bags. This isn't available in every municipality or every location. You have to ultimately check what you can do where you live. But here they collect yard waste, grass clippings, other organic matter, and they compost them for free in commercial facilities. They'll get processed into reasonably good compost free of weed seeds and grass seeds. Now, if I had a lot of land to process, I absolutely would not do that because this material right here is heavy. It's a lot of work to dispose of it. And for anything larger than, a small plot, it's impractical. But since I'm only doing a small plot here, I'm going to be doing this because it won't be that much work and it'll get me down to flat raw soil free of weeds and grass as fast as possible. So ultimately, whether you use the hoe or whether you use your bare hands, it'll depend on, just how it's going. But if you do it, you'll get a feel for what the right option is. Alrighty, gentlemen, I've now finished processing the land there, and we are left with these bags. These bags are nowhere near full, just because the material is so heavy that it only fills up a portion of the bag before the bag can handle more weight. Anyways, I'm going to take these to the back, and then we'll move on to the next step, which is tilling. So now we got to till the soil. Now generally it's best practice not to till your soil because you disturb the structures within and you expose the under layers of soil to the sun and the air, which kills the microbes. But when you're setting it up for the first time, it is advisable to till your soil because when you till that soil, you're going to loosen it up and the plants will be able to set down their roots easier if the soil is not rock hard. Also, I'm going to be using the tilling to mix in a large amount of additives because again, this is the first time I'm using this soil to really grow anything. Now, for my existing plots, any compost or anything that I add, I'm just going to sprinkle on top, and I will not be tilling that soil because I don't want to disturb it. But for this soil, we have to till it. Does have an issue in that the switch broke, so we put an aftermarket switch on. There are a couple things to note. This thing likes to jump around and it's pretty loud, so hearing protection is advisable. And as well, those blades, they're really gnarly, so if you get any of your body parts under there, you're gonna have a bad time. So it's best to stay a safe distance away and also to not run over the cord. But let's begin. So you're gonna see me just walk this back and forward here. Alrighty, now it's time for the most important part. When it comes to growing plants, the most important part is the soil from which they sprout. If your soil has no nutrition in it, no organic matter, no calcium, you're never going to grow good plants. It's just not going to happen. And blue crystals and Miracle Grow and fertilizer and the things that they typically use in industrial farming, not good enough. Okay, and we need more than just nitrogen. So, generally anything organic's good. There's a bunch of things you can throw in here, but today I'm going to be using 3 different things. Ingredient number 1, composted cattle manure. Okay, I just stick my hand in here. Just smells like earth. It's already processed, so there's really nothing dangerous in here. This is ready to go material right here. Now you can buy them in individual bags from the hardware store, and I recommend that if you're dealing with a small plot. But if you're dealing with a larger garden, say over 150 square feet, what I would really recommend is buying compost in bulk, say like half a cubic yard or something like that, because you're going to be able to get it much cheaper than this stuff right here. The next additive I have is this putrid food waste. So generally when you compost, you want there to be air, so aerobic compost, that's the stuff that smells nice. If you seal up food waste in a container, you get anaerobic compost, which smells putrid, but it still produces good material. So we're going to be mixing in a bunch of this stuff as well. But for the anaerobic stuff, you can basically throw in anything organic. Meat, cheese, dairy, fruits, vegetables, you name it. Although it doesn't smell very pleasant. The last additive, you're probably not going to need, most likely, but we're of course near a riverbed and we're in the prairies. So we have this very clay-like soil, and clay-like soil is just one of many soil types, and it has its disadvantages and its advantages. A couple advantages of clay-like soil is it's very good at retaining water and nutrients because the water flushes through very slowly as opposed to something, say, like sandy soil. But one of the drawbacks of clay-like soil is it's a bit harder for plants to grow their roots into it, and it's a bit more prone to compaction. Like you can see this right here, if I squeeze this, basically it turns into a brick. And people actually used to build houses out of this stuff. So one of the things that I'm going to add today to resolve that is this thing called clay buster. And what clay buster is, as far as I'm aware, is basically gypsum, like a drywall dust. Now this is going to do two things for us. One, it's going to stop the clay from clumping up, which is really good for keeping the soil sort of aerated and tilled. And the other thing it's going to do is add lots of calcium. And calcium, you know, you need it for your bones, but people don't often realize you also need it to grow plants, because calcium actually forms the structure of the plant. So if you have soil deficient in it, then your plants are going to be soft and weak and more prone to damage by wind, damage by insects and things like that. So by adding this calcium, this clay buster, I'm going to keep that soil nice and aerated, and I'm also going to give more nutrition to the plants. Lastly, there is one final additive. I'm also going to be adding some wood ash. This stuff is like gold here. You just sprinkle it on top or mix it into the soil, and plants love it, because if you think about it, this is what potash is. And what this does is it has all the nutrients that once existed in the material that wouldn't burn away. Things like calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, you know, and plants need minerals to grow. Now, there are many different types of additives, but this is what I have available today. So this is what I'm going to be using. Okay, so now that we've added several bags of compost, soil's already starting to look more rich. So let's move on to the food waste here. This is going to be kind of nasty because it's got mold on it. Ugh, gross. Ugh, look at that noise. Oh, ooh. Ugh. Looks like I even got some mold. Ooh. Oh, that's gotta smell. Oh, gross. There's even old moldy bacon in here. Alright, so I went and added the food waste, and it smells, well, I mean, you can imagine how putrid meat and stuff smells, right? But it's not too bad being outdoors and all, but now it's time to dust this all with ash. Also going to add in some charcoal from fire pits. So this is going to fluff up the soil and provide more air and nutrients to the plants, which is good. Really good for the plants. Okay, so now we have the makings of fertile soil. I just want to be clear. I don't want to be intimidating here. By no means do you have to do all of this. Just regular compost or manure is typically good enough. I'm just only adding all this stuff because it's all good and I have it on hand and I've been collecting it. Anyways, now we got to till all this in. All right, so the last thing we have to do to finish off this garden plot, aside from obviously planting things in it, is mulch. Now you can't always use mulch. Like if you're planting, you know, seeds from seed, typically mulch isn't really a great idea. But if you're planting like tomato plants or other large plants, mulch is a great idea. And what mulch is, it's a layer of organic material, right? So for example, I like to use cedar wood chips because they look good and they last forever. But you can also use leaves or other plant material and plant detritus. And what mulch is going to do for you is a few things. One, it's going to keep the sun off the soil, which will keep the sun from heating up the soil too much and killing microbes, and it'll give you a more consistent soil environment. Two, it'll help with compaction. And when you're walking on it, the mulch will help distribute out the load and keep you from crushing down the soil too much. Three, when it rains, if it rains directly on this silty soil, it has a tendency to sort of form a hardened crust. And of course, aside from, you know, it looks nice and keeps the soil healthy, one of the biggest benefits of mulch is it massively reduces your water consumption. If you think about it, the soil here is black, okay? So on a sunny day, you're just beaming heat soil and all of that water is evaporating out. Well, you heat up the mulch, but none of that water hardly evaporates out. Generally, they recommend about a 3-inch layer of the stuff, and I'm inclined to agree. So I'm gonna apply this material. I think you guys get the picture. I'll go and get this done. All right, the plot of land is now complete. We've got a bunch of mulch and underneath, rich, fertile soil. Well, actually it doesn't smell that good because of the putrid material that's been added, but it will, in time it will. Well, I think that about covers it. If you have any questions, please post them down in the comments below. If you thought this information was useful or helpful in any way, I'd encourage you to drop a like. Otherwise, if you want to follow along to see how well this performs in the future with planting and harvest, please subscribe and you can see that content down the line. And lastly, I just want to say thanks for watching and I will see you next time.